All right, guys, I just wanted to throw this out here. This is one of my working theories. Not saying this is going to happen. We've heard about 50 different scenarios of different conferences forming alliances, merging. Notre Dame's going to the Big Ten. No, they're not. Yes, they are. Who's going to, is the ACC going to be able to get out of their media rights deal? We've heard it all. And I'm just saying, when the dust settles, this is potentially a situation that we could be looking at, and it's 3 20-team super conferences with the Pac-12 dissolving and the ACC either dissolving or becoming a sub-conference. Okay, folks? This, I'm not saying it's likely. I'm saying based on what we're hearing, by the year 2026, with an expanded 12-team playoff. Of course, we've also got the rumor that the SEC and the Big Ten want to do an exclusive playoff, which is another issue in and of itself. But this is just a potential layout on the Big 12 kickstarting expansion, taking Pac-12 teams, and that really expediting things with Notre Dame going to the Big Ten. These would be the potential effects of that. So you guys can see the Big Ten, 16 teams. So this is with the addition of USC and UCLA. And then after those 16 teams they already have, you add Notre Dame. And guys, we know Notre Dame, they don't want to make a decision. Do they want that, do they want that uniqueness of being an independent still? It's very appealing for them, but they would stand to make a lot more money going to the Big Ten in the year 2025 or 2026 or whenever. Not saying they're going. This is just a theory. So Notre Dame goes to the Big Ten. Stanford goes to the Big Ten. And the reason Stanford would go to the Big Ten, academics. It's all academics. Oregon, so this would be the Big Ten taking Oregon. Of course, there's many situations that could happen with Oregon, but I think if Notre Dame gets in, you can be afforded, if you're the Big Ten, to also take Oregon. They're big players with Nike, with NIL. Their revenue might be a little bit lower, but they're an up-and-coming program that has really been competing well on the recruiting trail. That appeals to the Big Ten. And then Virginia, that's the one ACC team I think would make a lot more sense in the Big Ten than in the SEC. I know there's been some thoughts of Virginia going to the SEC. I think they make way more sense in the Big Ten. So the Big Ten taking an independent, 2 teams from the Pac-12, and then an ACC team to create their 20-team super conference. The most likely team out of those 4 to possibly join the Big Ten would be Notre Dame, I would say, because the Big Ten they're waiting on Notre Dame. If Notre Dame says we want in, they're going to be in, but there have been multiple reports Notre Dame wants to wait at least until 2025 before they join a conference. This is just the theory. Now moving to the SEC and how they'll get their 20-team super conference. You've got the 16 teams, so you've got the original 14 plus Texas and Oklahoma. And then on top of that, Clemson, Miami, Florida State. Those first 3 should not be surprising. And then I'm going Louisville. To me, Louisville fits an SEC profile way better than North Carolina does. Just my opinion. There's been rumors that North Carolina is a team that both the Big Ten and the SEC is targeting. But just personally, I feel like Louisville is more likely, based on how their program operates, more likely to be a team that heads to the SEC. They've got big NIL money. They make a lot of revenue. They're one of the top teams in the ACC, or in the ACC in terms of revenue. So they would be wanted. And in this little mock scenario, that's how the SEC gets to 20 team. Clemson, it's obvious. Miami is pretty obvious. And you could create that crazy Florida, matchup. Florida State, Florida, and Miami all in the SEC. That would be a crazy 3-way rivalry. And then you've also got Louisville as well, and I explained that. And then how does the Big 12 get to 20 teams? Well, you've got the 12 already in the conference with, BYU joining, Cincinnati joining, Houston joining as well. So you're at 12 teams. You need 8 more. Where do you get those 8 more? Well, you're taking Utah. You're taking Arizona, Arizona State, and Colorado. Those teams have all been in talks with the Big 12, and the Big 12 is going to want to add these teams as early as this summer to their conference. They want it done quick. They don't want their conference to fall behind. They want to be the third mega power of college football for the future. So those 4 teams go. Washington also latches on with those 4 teams. In this scenario, Washington and Oregon, the 2 teams everyone talks about together, they would be split up, with Oregon getting lucky and getting an invite to the Big Ten, while Washington has to settle for the Big 12 and their super conference. And then I just kind of speculated, Pittsburgh, possibly. And then I don't know what happens to Duke and North Carolina in this scenario, or other ACC teams. Could Duke and North Carolina be the other teams possibly going to the Big 12? It seems a little bit far-fetched that those teams would be in the Big 12. It's like, do you want to split that rivalry up? Because I know there's been talks that North Carolina is wanted by both the Big 10 and the SEC, but that's like a package deal, right, with Duke. I mean, are you going to split the rivalry up in basketball? That seems very surprising. And it also seems surprising that these 2 teams would go to the Big 12. But again, in this scenario, I don't know where to put them. Maybe they both go to the SEC. Maybe they both go to the Big 10. But in this scenario, if you have Stanford, Oregon, Virginia, Notre Dame going to the Big 10, those spots are taken up. And the SEC obviously is going to want Clemson, Miami, Florida State, Louisville. So, could North Carolina replace Louisville in the SEC? Sure, but you would also think Duke would come with them, So I don't know what happens to them. This is just a quick speculation I'm doing. And then also, there's been multiple reports, if you guys don't know, of the Mountain West and Washington State, Oregon State, and California in talks. If the Pac-12 goes completely haywire, if the Pac-12 loses those 4 teams, Arizona, Arizona State, Colorado, and Utah, to the Big 12, Washington State wants a place to go. They would fit in perfectly with the Mountain West. Oregon State as well, and then California, really nowhere else for them to go, and the Mountain West would probably have to add 1 more team at that point, because they would have an odd number of teams if those 3 joined. They would have to take a team from maybe the Big Sky or something, and then you guys can see the result. The Pac-12 completely dissolves, and the ACC dissolves or becomes a sub-conference depending on the amount of teams. They could look to have 6 teams in the ACC and then take, maybe 6 more from group of 5 conferences down south. But either way, you would be a sub-conference at that point. So in this scenario, the Pac-12 would cease to exist and the ACC would be on, basically, it would be like, one of those stars when it goes off and it goes out and it's black. It's still simmering a little bit. It's still a sub-conference, but it's just done. So guys, this is just a scenario. Again, there's been thousands of other talking points. There's people that think, the Big 12, the Big 10 is done at 16. If Notre Dame doesn't join the Big 10, they're not adding anyone else. The SEC, there's really no reason for them to add anyone else at this point and totally destroy the ACC. But Notre Dame could set all this in motion if they go to the Big 10. This is just fun little speculation I'm doing for conference realignment. Of course, there's also the idea certain conferences could merge into one to prevent the SEC and the Big Ten from forming an exclusive playoff. It would be very hard to stop an exclusive playoff if Notre Dame goes to the Big Ten and Clemson goes to the SEC. Those 2 conferences would have so much of the power in college football. That is the main issue that a program like Oregon faces, because there is a scenario, and I detailed this in my last video, where Oregon isn't able to compete in a national title, theoretically a national title, because the national champion would guaranteed have to come from the SEC or the Big Ten, because the playoff would be exclusive. So, guys, I hope that doesn't happen. This is just an idea of a 3 league, 20-team super conference, and would they still, theoretically, even with the Big 12 Super Conference, it's not that powerful. That's why that's so scary. The idea of the SEC and the Big 10 creating their own their own exclusive playoff, it is real. It's real because all of these teams joining the Big 12, Utah, Arizona State, Colorado, Washington, there's no real super team there. You would need a super team to prevent the SEC and Big Ten, especially if the Big Ten gets Notre Dame. Especially if the Big Ten gets Notre Dame and Oregon. And the SEC adds Clemson, Florida State, Miami. What's preventing them at that point? I think this would form an exclusive playoff, even with the Big 12 being a super conference, which they would be kind of a way worse super conference. There's no way you could stop a playoff. So I don't know how you would stop an exclusive playoff. Like, it's a major concern at this point because there are multiple sources, multiple people in ESPN that really are in the know, that are warning people that this could happen. But guys, this is just a fun little scenario of a 3-conference, 20-team per conference super college football league. And guys, we all hate this. I would much rather it go back to the Power 5, a way better balance of powers, and you could even balance it even better by taking some teams out, putting more teams in, getting everyone to 14 teams, getting everyone on the same page in terms of playing 9 conference games, 3 non-conference games. It's such a shame we never got to see college football completely balanced, and now it's going in, because it was still a little bit unbalanced with all how the scheduling worked in between the leagues. It was like this. Now it's this. So that's out the window at this point with these conferences the way they are, with the additions, for the SEC and the Big Ten. It's whatever. But guys, make sure you're following me on Twitter. Link to that's always in the description. I'm, of course, the Depressed Ginger. Thank you for watching.